Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Those Who Can't Do Coach podcast for another episode of In the Trenches. So today I have on somebody very special to me, my best friend in the world, and also my client, Kyle. So I actually had a lot of people reach out since I started the podcast and say, like, when are you gonna have Kyle on? When is Kyle gonna be on? And actually yesterday when I posted the question box, or actually it would be 2 days ago now, about who I should have on the podcast coming up in the next weeks and months, Kyle was the most repeated answer. Nobody else was repeated. There were some really good options in there. I've talked to some of those people that are going to be coming on. But Kyle was the only repeat answer, and he got repeated about 3 times from different people. And so for me, I'm like, okay, well, people do want to hear from him. Again, I just didn't want to seem nepotistic, having my own client on, seem like I'm self-promoting what I do. But at the same time, I think Kyle's process and how he's really come to the position he is within bodybuilding is super unique to him. And it's not even necessarily just about me or what he's done with me, but it's also about how he's transformed as a person through that process. Kyle's a pretty open book as well. I'm not going to say he's going to tell you every little detail, but there's not just been, a metamorphosis as an actual bodybuilder or an athlete through this process, but there's been a lot of work he's done on his mental. There's been a lot of work he's done on his personal stuff, whether it be, being more financially organized, being more organized in his relationships, which we might get into some of that as well too. And he's just grown so much as a person that it's helped him to be a better bodybuilder. And I think that's something we're going to talk about quite a bit today, of course, as well as the juicy details that you guys all like to hear, which is going to be some of the stuff we did in prep, some of the stuff we're doing now in the off season, what that kind of looks like, and explaining why we've come to those decisions and why we're implementing those things for sure. But nonetheless, I think that's a good enough intro. I want to give Kyle the floor here. One thing I like to do a bit differently than other podcasts, I actually like to let my guests kind of promote their social media or whatever it is initially off the bat, because this is when the most of you are listening. At the end is when the most people have tuned out, right? So
Yeah.
Kyle, if you just want to introduce yourself real quick, anything that maybe I didn't say, provide how long you've been doing the sport, what your social media is, and then also some good things could be, what you do for a living, outside of obviously being a bodybuilder.
Yeah. So my name's Kyle. I'm 25 years old. I have been bodybuilding now for about 5 years. Started right before I turned 20. So been at it for a little bit now. Outside of bodybuilding, I work at the one of the heart hospitals up in Minneapolis. I'm a cardiovascular technician, so working in the cath lab, kind of being cardiologist right hand man for minimally invasive cardiovascular procedures. I just got this job about 2 months ago. It's been a huge change for me. It's a lot of work, but it's been super fun, super rewarding. And just like within bodybuilding, when I started with you, learning so much in what I enjoy doing outside of work, it's been super rewarding to learn and start something new with work too, and learning so much as I go. So it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, it's been a grind lately. I've really enjoyed it. It's been awesome. So you've seen me change through all that. So it's been great.
Yeah, and what's the social media just so people can
Oh,
find you? Kyle
yeah.
doesn't currently coach. We've had some discussions. I think he's somebody who could in the future, and I'd really love him to see him start doing that. But he's a bodybuilder, and he's obviously, it's always good for them to grow their social media. So if you want to tell them where to find you real quick.
Yeah. My Instagram is Kyle.Dutkiewicz. I'll spell the last name for you. You could probably see it on the screen, but it's DUTKIEWICZ. Kind of a lengthy last name there, but I mainly run Instagram. I post on TikTok here and there. I've been kind of lazy about it. I should just transfer my reels from Instagram over to TikTok. But I've been trying to keep up on Instagram a little bit. I kind of slacked there a little bit after prep. I was super hot on it during prep, and my Instagram exploded, and I have not been too great about it since. But yeah, mainly running Instagram. That's about all I got.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so super funny too, because I feel like every time you post, you get such good reactions. People love to see what you're doing,
Dude, I
even if it's just
know.
you hitting a front double. And I'm just like, Why don't you just
Just
throw
keep
some shit
fucking
up there? But at
posting.
the same time, dude, that's like it's a perfect description of who you are as a person though, because like that's not why you do it. Like you're a
Hmm.
bodybuilder's bodybuilder. You love
Yeah.
this shit. And that's why it's super fun to have you on the podcast is because I think there's a lot of younger guys who look up to you, even just in our community. Like you have younger
Hmm.
guys at our gym coming up to you all the time, like
Hmm.
being like, dude, you look so big. Like, how are things going? And they really look up to you. Some of my other clients really look up to you, some of my younger clients especially. And I think something that helps for them to hear on this podcast is like, social media was never really a factor for either of us, but you speaking to you specifically in why you decided to do this. You wanted to be a bodybuilder and you just loved what bodybuilding represented.
Yeah, yeah, dude. I feel like for years I went without posting like once on social media that I was doing what I was doing with bodybuilding, and really throughout this last prep was when I really started like compounding posts and posting a bunch of stuff, and a lot of people had some super nice things to say, which I've appreciated a lot. But like I guess what you haven't seen too is I go to the gym a lot later than you now. I go around 6 p.m. After work every day, and the crowd around that time is a lot of younger guys, some of which who are competitors, but a lot of them have come up to me and been like, dude, like, who are you? Like, you're a big guy. Like, they just kind of picking my brain about some stuff. So it's been super nice. It's really rewarding to get that kind of feedback from people, especially within, just like a smaller community. I feel like in the Minneapolis area and in the metro area, it's kind of like it feels like a small knit group of bodybuilders, and knowing faces and being familiar with certain names around the area is really cool. I feel like I've really come to grow into the community around here. So
Yeah, yeah. And to just take it aside real quick, I just want to say, any local people listening to this, if you're not, I know there's a lot of gyms you could go to in the area, and there's obviously one very big conglomerate that has a lot of gyms that a lot of people are frequenting. And I understand for a lot of people, maybe they prefer it, maybe it's closer to the house, but like if you are about this stuff, you're about bodybuilding. You guys should really be coming down to Iron Alliance. Like, I know that there again, there are gyms that are bigger, there are gyms that have more equipment, but every piece we have there is just like, and I don't even own the gym. Like, this is not a self-promotion anyway. I have no affiliation with the gym other than I'm just like, there and I train there and I'm
mhm.
friends with the owners and stuff. Um, every piece of equipment in that place is great. And it's a bodybuilder's gym, man. And the thing is, it's a lot about community. And I would just love to see for that gym to become just filled with a bunch of really good bodybuilders. And it is already, but I think it could just be so much more. And I think so many people are missing out on the community we're building there because they want to go to the gym that's 5 minutes from their house. And again, we know one of like the brands within the area has a lot of gyms. So there are a lot of options for people to go to. But, at the end of the day, I always found that going to the right gym is super worth it because you're going to run into somebody like Kyle who can actually, be a relationship, be someone that you can become friends with, be a training partner for some people. Who even knows, like Kyle and I only get to train together once or twice a week now. We used to be training partners, but, maybe Kyle might be needing a training partner. Who knows? And it's just like,
Yeah.
I think that community should be something that should be growing faster than it is, and it makes me a little bit sad to see like some of these really good bodybuilders going to some of these other gyms because although those gyms, like the individual owners of the specific branch of those gyms, they probably take good pride in what they do, but they're not gearing towards bodybuilders where we really
Mhm.
are. So if you're in the sport and you really want to go somewhere where you feel like you're part of a community, you should, and you're in the Minneapolis metro, you really should be making your way over to Iron Alliance. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
dude. I mean, there's a reason that I haven't switched gyms, even with my busy work schedule, and I drive, 30 minutes down to Burnsville to go work out, during the week, is because I love that. I love the
And
gym
we'll
there,
just
dude.
say it because we're about saying things, and you live 10 minutes from a Lowe's
Yeah,
Campione.
no, I
And
do. I live, dude, I think I live 5 minutes from one, to be completely honest. There's
yeah,
one, my work is here, my house is here. There's one right in between, and I don't go to it.
making the trip to go to like a good bodybuilding gym is just so worth it. And again, people see the flash. They're like, oh, but this gym has more equipment. It's like, yeah, but what's the quality of those pieces?
Mhm.
What's the
Mhm.
quality of that environment? But
Mhm.
anyway, we'll continue on with the interview and like the topic. So kind of getting into your roots and getting into bodybuilding, which I think could be an interesting place to just start. It makes it
Yeah.
kind of flow from there. What kind of got you into the sport? I'm sure I've probably heard this story at some point, but
Yeah.
I can't really remember, so I'm interested to hear as well.
So, dude, I'll throw it back to Iron Physique down in lacrosse is kind of where it all started for me. So during COVID time, um, you know, long story short, I had just lost my mom and the gym was like the thing for me. It was during COVID. It was really hard to work out in Minnesota at the time. I was in college at the time. It was hard to work out in Minnesota. You had to go at certain times so it wasn't super crowded and they
Yeah,
were they were
we had the Coof lockdown, dude.
yeah, dude, they were really on your ass about everything working out in Winona where I was at the time. So me and my roommate, we would switch driving every day. We would drive all the way down to La Crosse to go work out, and he knew you might know this name, Manny Drexler.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Manny's a old friend.
yeah, yeah, and he introduced me to Manny, who we got to know each other. We were on Instagram, Snapchatting and stuff like that. And he came up to me at the gym one time. He's like, dude, like, have you ever thought about competing? I was like, never in my life. I was just going to the gym to try to get big, to get my mind off of everything that I was dealing with at the time with the loss of my mom. And, it kind of sparked something for me. There was actually a guy that I was watching on YouTube. He was a car guy. He was out in San Diego. He decided to prep for a bodybuilding show. He like kind of vlogged the whole prep and I watched his whole transformation and first prep and everything. So I kind of got like a good inside view of what a prep looked like and what prepping for a bodybuilding show looked like. And that's kind of where I fell in love with it. Um, and I ended up coming home that winter break in I think it was 2019, from college. And there was a guy at my gym, super jacked guy. I was working out with a buddy at the time, and I was like, that guy's huge. Like, look at him. He must be a bodybuilder or something like that. And he was like, just go talk to him, go pick his brain. So I talked to him. He was prepping for a show. I think he was like 8 or 9 weeks out at the time, like that. And he actually, down the line, a couple months later, ended up becoming my first coach and got me introduced to everything. And that's kind of where it started for me. Nothing crazy. Just talked to a few people. A couple people were like, "You should try this out." I decided, sure, why not?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
never
dude.
like a, I was never like a, I feel like a lot of people have the roots where they're like, oh, like I used to watch Jay Cutler and Ronnie and Dorian and these crazy, like, hardcore training videos and stuff like that. It wasn't just me. Somebody was like, you should try it sometime. And I did.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's really similar to me too. I'll hear people talk about like some of the old like Ronnie and Jay videos, and I hope nobody like takes offense to this because I'm sure that stuff is great.
No,
But honestly, I haven't ever seen Jay Cutler ripped to shreds or like any of that
no.
stuff. I know of them. I got into it same way. Just like I really liked working out, and somebody was
Hmm.
like, have you ever thought about bodybuilding? And I was like, no, but I'm basically doing that now anyway.
Hmm.
But yeah, dude, I think getting into kind of the topic, something that maybe a lot of people don't know about you is that you did lose your mom, a few
Hmm.
years back. And um, we don't have to get too far into it if you don't want to, but I think
Oh,
that
I
was
don't
a
mind at
huge
all.
focal point for you, especially this prep was just,
Yeah.
you know, what it meant to you just kind of with like timing of how this prep lined up. And I know that the anniversary of your mom's passing was pretty close to your show
Yeah.
as
So
well.
Yeah, so I mean, I was 19 years old when I lost my mom. It was the heat of COVID. The world was a disaster as it was already. And on top of this, I'm 19 years old. I had just gotten done with my first year at college, so I had moved away. And I came home and it was that summer that I lost my mom. And relating to this prep, the reason I decided to do Detroit in the first place is because the date that Detroit was supposed to take place on was February 14th originally, which was my mom's birthday. And that meant a lot to me. Signing up for the show, I was like, this is going to be really cool. My like a big driver for me in this in general is like, I think she would be super proud of me doing what I'm doing. Maybe, my mom was a nurse and kind of a health nut, so maybe she wouldn't be proud of the route that I decided to take being enhanced, but that's beside the fact. But that was a big driver for me to do Detroit, and then it got pushed back. But her birthday was actually 1 month out from the show, so that was one of those things that, like, that day I remember sitting down and I looked at a picture of her and I was like, I got 1 month to like bring this thing home, and that was like everything I needed to push me those last 4 weeks. So
Yeah, and isn't your correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't your mom from Detroit originally?
no,
Or
my
Michigan?
stepmom's from Detroit.
Stepmom's from Detroit, that's
Yeah,
what
my
it was.
stepmom's from
I knew
Detroit.
somebody in your family was
Yeah,
from there. But
yeah, yeah.
anyway, still cool nonetheless.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I just think for a lot of us, experiencing loss is kind of part of our why with bodybuilding. And I know
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, we shouldn't necessarily always assume that that's what our lost loved ones would want us to do, but it's more just like, but we know bodybuilding is dangerous. We know what we're
Hmm.
doing with our health
Hmm.
can be somewhat erratic, but taking that risk because we almost have the benefit of doing it for our loved ones who don't have the benefit of risking anything, of doing anything.
Yeah,
We're like,
yeah.
we have this life and we're gonna use it for something that um is intense but rewarding and also, exhilarating in a lot of different ways. And it's kind of that thought process for me about living life to the fullest because, I lost my best friend at the time in
Yeah,
COVID to brain
yeah.
cancer. And
Hmm.
that was a huge reason why I got back into bodybuilding, because I had before and kind of had fallen out of love with it, got really depressed. And I was just like, I'm just wasting like my life. Like I don't know what I want to do with my degree, like all this stuff. And I was like, the only thing that ever really gave me meaning was bodybuilding. And you look at where we're at now and it's given both of our lives a ton of meaning. So I think it's a
Oh,
really good thing
absolutely.
to talk about because I think there's probably a lot of people out there who have experienced loss, and sometimes that loss and sometimes those relationships that they, kind of mourn in a sense or look back fondly on are the relationships that push them to push themselves now.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but starting out with bodybuilding, you said that you kind of just met your first coach at the gym. How long did you work with your first coach?
Oh gosh. I was with him, so we did like a we did a bulk for like a year. I competed. Shoot, I was with him for probably like 2.5 years, I want to say. I want to say
Yeah.
I was with him for 2.5 years. I was with my next coach for about the same amount of time, and then here I am with you for 2 years with the second coach. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was it was probably a year after my first show that I ended up dropping my first coach, and we had just spun our wheels really bad, and I needed to move on at that point. I saw a lot more in myself than where it was leading me.
Yeah, and I think that's never to like disparage a previous coach or anything. I know you're
No,
still friends with the previous coach and everything, and I'm
yeah,
sure, that's years ago. He's probably
yeah,
really improved as a coach in many ways.
yeah,
But I do think that that's something that does happen in coaching, even when
hmm,
somebody is a really good coach, is sometimes you get to a point where maybe you've kind of seen out your potential with that coach and it's time to move
hmm,
on. Hopefully
yeah,
what I would say is I think that happens less when coaches are, continuing to learn and continuing to push themselves,
a hundred
continuing to
percent,
also ask questions of their
yeah,
their circle of, if they're friends with other good coaches. That's one thing that I think, I was telling Tom the other day how grateful I've been for him, and I've told Joe many times how grateful I've been for him, just because I feel like even just in the last 6 months, my ability to do this has just been improving steadily because of the people I'm surrounding myself with. So I think that's an important aspect. But
hmm,
I would say too, it's like it's never to disparage what anybody did previously. So kind of getting into like that first initial part of
hmm.
bodybuilding, one thing that I know is that you went enhanced pretty early on in bodybuilding.
Dude,
You
I
didn't
did,
spend too
yeah.
much time being natural.
No,
So
I was
what
like,
did that kind of look like?
dude, I was pretty much 2 years on the money into training, like lifting weights in general.
Training,
It
not
like
even necessarily thinking you're a bodybuilder.
no, no, not even. Like I was a cross country and a track guy in high school. I graduated high school at like 125, 130 pounds. I started training the day I graduated high school is the day I started in the weight room, the day I started training with one of my buddies. And about 2 years into that, yeah, I went enhanced. I pulled the trigger, did the good old test deca D-ball cycle, baby.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about that. So, what was that first cycle like? This was with your first coach, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
test deca D-ball out the gate, like which
Test
you
deca
know,
D-ball. I don't
I
remember
think
exactly what doses were, but yeah, it
what I
was.
will say is I think for some people, like if they do well with 19 Nors, Deca can have a place. I probably would leave the D-ball out for like pretty much just about anyone. But that being said, the test deca D-ball cycle for your first cycle, definitely not the way that I want to
Oh, dude,
start somebody
I
on their
got
first cycle.
so fat.
The just like the level of water retention we're talking about is just obscene for most people, especially if you don't start that first cycle super lean, stuff like that. It's just a disaster. But what was it? Do you remember what the actual like milligram dose of everything was?
I wanna say, I know for a fact I was doing 400 test. Deca, I don't remember exactly. It might have been like 250, 300. I won't say exactly. I'm not sure. And then D-ball, I want to say was at like 50 a day.
Wow, that's a pretty hefty first cycle. Like most people, you know, not to just be like, oh, this is what I do, but most people, like, right, they're gonna if somebody's coming to me, it's their first cycle. We're just gonna start with testosterone solo, maybe
Yeah,
have an
yeah,
aromatase
as you should.
inhibitor on hand. Uh, you know, and then we're gonna progress through that. And honestly, these days, I was just telling a client who was starting with me now, who's gonna be going enhanced, that honestly, my second move, once we've like really seen out like solo testosterone to a good degree,
Mhm.
which could be like a full first year of bodybuilding, maybe even more in some cases. I'm usually looking more to like growth hormone is like the second thing to being added into that mix.
Yeah, dude,
Um,
and that's something I didn't pull trigger on. I think I was just telling you this the other day. That's something I didn't pull trigger on until, I don't know, probably like 3 years in of being enhanced, and I kind of wish I had pulled trigger on that sooner. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I think there's some cases where maybe you end up going to a secondary compound earlier on in that process before something like growth hormone. If somebody's like a really high converter to
Mhm.
estrogen, and like you need to manage that. And you can't really push the testosterone dosage without just taking an obscene amount of aromatase inhibitors. Because I think aromatase inhibitors have their place. Like, I definitely use them with guys, but if you're having to take like a milligram of 8X every day just to take 600 tests and,
Yeah,
we need to go up in milligrams, probably time to look to a secondary compound. So there's no
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right or wrong way to do it, except unless you do test deca D-ball right out the gate. That's the only wrong way to do it.
Dude,
Um,
I could probably pull up pictures for you at some time, but like start to end of that cycle, like I looked like a different human being, and it's mostly because of the water retention and then just the pure amount of
is that the
gluttonous
Muffin
fat I
Man
put on me.
pictures that
Um,
you posted that
y-
reel?
yes, yes, it was. Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
pull it up. Let's pull it up.
If you go on my Instagram, that I think it's pinned at the top of my Instagram.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that big reel
Let's
that
pull her
blew up.
up.
Yeah, that was that. Pull that up, bro. I got that.
I'm gonna have to mute the video real quick when it goes because
Oh,
it'll
it's
probably be
fine.
loud as shit. But
Yeah.
here, let's take a look. Let's take a look at the Muffin Man. So this is Test
That
Deca
one,
D-ball
yeah.
Muffin Man. Okay, we're good. No
Oh.
sound popped up. Test Deca D-ball Muffin Man. Oh god, we're outing your first coach. It's all good. And then there's in prep for Detroit when we were rocking along.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So um real quick, I mean, this is Kyle, guys. So this is his Instagram. If you want to find him, if you're not familiar with him, we'll
Thank you.
probably come back to that at some point here to talk about some different things as we get into
Sure.
like the off season stuff,
Sure.
etc. And also prep in Detroit.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, dude. So test deca D ball, probably so like 50 milligrams of D ball training days. Maybe you're training what 5-6 times a week.
Yeah, I think I was actually training 6 times a week at that point too.
Yeah, yeah. So we're talking
Which
like 300 milligrams of D-ball a week. So we're talking like, 900-ish milligrams of androgens out the gate first
mhm,
cycle. Yeah.
mhm.
I mean, there's a lot we could pull out of that, but we're not just going to needlessly like talk crap about a protocol or anything like that. I think people
No.
can kind of take from that what they will. But how long, like, so how long did you run that before you were like, I don't know if I really like the way this is like reacting with my
So
body or making myself feel.
we had started with the D ball for I don't remember, I probably ran the D ball for like 8 to 10 weeks or something. I remember I was sitting one day eating breakfast, eating my first meal. I had like a sinus infection going on, and I was eating like, I think I was eating like a bagel and eggs or something like that, and just blood dripped out of my nose onto my plate. And I'm like, all right. Like, maybe it was from the sinus infection, but was probably also because my blood pressure was just through the roof or something. I don't know. I wasn't checking like at that time, dude. I mean, I was, just uh lowly little Kyle bodybuilder. I wasn't like checking health markers like I am now, checking my blood pressure and stuff like that, or checking my fasted blood glucose. It was, my blood pressure was probably through the roof, retaining all that water and having gained as much weight as I did in such a short
Yeah.
amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. So you kind of did that, and then pretty much after that, like first bulk is when you did your first prep, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and
I
so
hopped up.
did you roll in peak bulk or did you kind of cut down a little bit and then start prep? What'd that look like?
Oh, I started prep. I started prep at peak bulk, bro. I was like 200 and I was like
Oh yeah.
212, 213 pounds straight from peak bulk. We did a 24-week prep into that first
At least you
shredded
gave
cheddar
yourself
show.
time.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We gave ourselves quite a bit of time. It was good. I ran most of that prep at Iron Physique in Lacrosse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, your first show too, like you didn't get in bad condition. Like it
Mm-mm.
wasn't bad for a first showing
Very
condition wise.
respectable in my opinion. I think it was
Yeah.
pretty
And
solid.
so there's nothing really wrong with that. Were there some things in that prep that maybe, you're kind of like definitely should have done that differently? Definitely. I mean, obviously you've been through another prep now, and I would say
Yeah.
that most factors were pretty well controlled in our current prep. So
Yeah.
obviously you have a lot to compare it to, but just like looking back, were there things that really stood out to you? Even at the time, I guess at the time you're like, why am I doing this? Like, is this really helping?
It was for the most part, I was pretty oblivious to like how to like diet down because I had never done so before. I mean, doing cross country and track, like I said, I ate like a freaking garbage can. Like it was plates of pizza rolls and like just eat as much as humanly possible because had so much caloric expenditure running, 5, 6, 7 miles a day. And then when it came to dieting, we started off really, really slow, and we kept going slow, and then it's like we hit the 8-week mark out, and it was like, all right, we got to get you down now, and it was crash diet from there. And I remember feeling like absolute hell from
Yeah.
like 6 weeks, and then to the show it was just so little calories, so much cardio. I was doing over an hour of cardio and very little calories, and obviously I didn't have all the muscle to support like I do now. But I want to say my calories got down below like 1400 or something like that by the end. So
Yeah, and there's definitely situations where you can't avoid some of that. Like at the
yeah,
end of the day, it takes
absolutely.
what it takes. But it really is just like setting up your actual prep correctly and your timeline, having enough time, and also making decisions off the front end. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Uh, I know that some of my other friends who coach, who are good coaches as well, are really big fans of this. These days, when I'm starting people in prep, like I'm not afraid, especially for coming from a pretty high calorie environment, to take a really big pull right off the front end and get things moving.
a hundred
Um,
percent, dude.
yeah. But to kind of speak to that, I think that there are situations where you do have to push really hard. Maybe you have a shotgun prep, a close timeline.
Hmm.
Maybe you have an athlete who didn't get into prep in the best way at the start. But as a coach, always you should be considering those things and letting people know if you're like,
Yeah.
hey, we can do this. It's going to be really not ideal. Whereas
Uh-huh.
like you had plenty of time. So it's like,
Yeah.
kind of maybe
It's like,
some
what the hell happened?
mismanagement of timeline there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did the
And that's what,
compound use change a lot between prep
um,
and off season?
things, oh gosh, it was a while ago. I know I took test, mast, I believe I did EQ in there too. And then we did that group of guys that I was like being coached by and like their camp.
Mm,
They really like Proviron. And that's one thing I feel like I don't hear a lot of nowadays is Proviron. So maybe you can educate me on that a little bit. I know I was
sure.
taking Proviron throughout prep, and then we obviously sprinkled in Tren at the end. So
Yeah, yeah. I like Proviron. I think it can have some utility, especially with like the limited ability to use some of the DHTs now. Um, I think that for some people, it can have a little bit of a cosmetic benefit. For
okay,
your physique specifically, obviously we didn't use Proviron in your prep
no,
because you're a pretty naturally dry, like grainy person in general. I
hmm,
wasn't really too worried about extra any extra like water retention to manage, things like that. We had your stack design where we needed it. Um, I think for some people it's a complete throwaway. I think for some people it can make a difference, but
hmm,
I think there's a lot of coaches who just put it in every, client's plan for
that's
prep
kind of
and
how it
don't really
was.
understand if it's doing anything.
Yeah,
Usually if I'm going to think about using it, I'll put it in, I'll see if it does anything. And if it's like I can't tell you what this is doing or if it made a difference, then I'll just be like, just forget it, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Um, but yeah, I'm definitely not one to deny that there is cosmetic benefits of certain compounds. Like as we know, there's some strategic oral usage that we used in your prep towards the
hmm,
end for cosmetic benefits that worked extremely well. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not one to say that there's not a benefit there. I just wonder with like Proviron usage, if you're using a fair bit of a different DHT like Masteron or Primobolan, how much you're really getting out of that.
yeah,
But a good person to ask on that would be Tom. That'd be a good
to-
question for me to ask him what
for
he's kind of
sure.
seeing. Because, like I said, I've used it with some people. I've definitely seen some people where I felt like it made a difference, but I'm not 100% sure like what the whole theory is with like I know it's because of like SHBG binding and competing,
Mhm.
but I'm not really sure what the whole like theoretical mechanism for like it making someone harder is
Yeah,
with it. I'll be quite honest.
yeah,
Yeah, but no, I mean, it's like that. There's nothing like egregious about that composition. I mean, we use test, mast, and EQ in your
yeah,
prep as well
yeah,
too.
yeah. It wasn't anything like out of the ordinary by any means.
No,
It was pretty cookie cutter. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. So really, with that first prep, it kind of mostly just comes down to like, hey, probably should push things a little bit harder, a little bit sooner.
Yeah, dude,
But
and the
nonetheless,
timeline
you
the
still got to
timeline
do
was
some shape.
everything. Sorry.
No, no, you keep going, dude. This is about
No,
you.
the timeline was the big fault there. And that's one thing that I really learned from you through this prep was like timeline is everything, and you got to be on the ball with your timeline and yeah, I mean we managed our timeline very well, so
Yeah. So that was your first prep, and Detroit was your second prep. So
yep,
between that, you had a pretty lengthy, basically 3-year off season, and you
yeah,
worked with
almost
Nick
four.
Justice in that off season. And
Yeah,
and I've said this to many people, like I would. I'll let you speak to it, but there's no ill feelings there. Like Nick did a great job with you in that off season. I think
yeah.
there were obviously some reasons why you decided to go a different direction,
Hmm.
even being in a prep, but at the end of the day, like he took your physique to a pretty different level within that 3 years, and
Oh my
obviously
God.
a lot of that work resulted to what we were able to do in that
Yeah,
prep and put on stage. So if you
yeah,
want to get
dude.
into that a little bit, like what kind of changed with that off season, I know that probably a big part of you going with Nick was just because you saw that he was much more of like a serious organized coach and all
Yeah,
that
dude.
stuff.
I was a big fan of Nick because I had seen back I don't know if you know about like the P Street fitness page that him and Addie had on Instagram. I had seen that they had worked out at Iron Physique in Lacrosse there, and I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe I've seen these guys before, and I dropped them a follow, and I kind of discovered who Nick was around that time, and it was like he had gotten signed by Hostile in like 2020 and stuff, and he was kind of growing his name and his page and stuff like that. So I was a fan of his. I followed him pretty closely, and he was really inspiring at the time. And then he ended up hitting me up, and we were talking, and I decided to make that switch. And that off season for me was what really, in my opinion, really made me a bodybuilder. It was about living the lifestyle in the off season, managing my education because I was still in college at the time, as well as is checking my boxes as a bodybuilder. And I mean, dude, I put on a shit ton of size with Nick in the almost yeah, like 3 years of that off season. And like I had mentioned earlier, it was like a year after my show that you know part of it was probably me, part of it was a little bit on that first coach that I had, but like we had stopped checking in, my plan wasn't really getting updated, I wasn't putting on a ton of size, I was spinning my wheels, I was having some poor side effects from the cycle design, I think, that I was running at the time. And yeah, Nick and I had gotten in contact, and he really really took me to another level. I mean, you saw how much I grew, and what we
Oh,
were able
yeah.
to put on stage with all the size that I put on. So
Yeah, yeah, and that's the one thing I really wanted to reaffirm because I'm not about in this industry. I think we've all made mistakes with how, maybe we've been in the past towards other people or things like that. But ever more so now than ever these days, I'm really about just like I just want everybody to, be successful that deserves it. And like, I want people to do good work, and I want people to, people who are doing good work to get their shine. And Nick did a really good job with you. One of the things that I think I noticed, especially going from those earlier situations, and like, because we became really good friends towards the end of the time you were working with Nick,
hmm
just purely from like approach to bodybuilding, he really fixed a lot of those aspects for you. And then in addition to like, he got you on like a much better track with as far as like PED design and getting you
oh
to a
yeah,
place that was actually working for your body.
yeah.
I think and you can speak to this, but utilizing leveraging testosterone a bit more, and then having like secondary compounds that agreed with
Yes,
you a bit more, whether it was like
yes,
primo or mast or EQ, whatever it was at the
yeah,
time, just
yeah.
having things that agreed with you more, and not just throwing kind of cookie cutter cycle designs at you, but actually figuring out what worked for your body.
Yeah, and I don't think Nick and I actually touched EQ at all. We did
Okay, yeah.
Primo and Mast, and at the time I was like trying to save a little money, so it was mostly Master on for a while.
Nice.
But yeah, when I had the money in college to afford Primo, I would buy it up when you could actually get your hands on it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and I think too, just being able to leverage testosterone a bit more, was probably a big factor in that too. Because like, when you're running a lot more 19 NORs, I know you, because I work with you now, that you're not like the crazy high converter, but, you
hmm
convert a decent bit to estrogen.
hmm
So probably when you're running those 19 NORs before, it was a little bit of a disaster for managing, like, the estrogen component, and actually being able to run testosterone a little bit higher. Whereas with the
Yeah.
DHTs, you're not getting it. At the very least, Primo is probably actually helping with that to a degree. For some people, Masteron does. I don't really find for most people it makes a huge, huge difference, though, personally, in my personal experience.
hmm
Um, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't convert to estrogen. So at least you're not getting estrogen conversion from
Yeah.
Masteron.
Yeah. Yeah.
So being able to leverage testosterone a bit more. And I you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like he probably reversed you a little bit, was just like, "Hey, we're gonna start a bit on the bit lower end because you're not really getting what you could be out of the current androgen load you've used in the past anyway."
Yeah, yeah. When I first started, like you're talking about when I first started with Nick.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so when I first started with him, he was like, "All right, dude, we're gonna like mini cut like hard." We cut me
Mhm.
down really hard. I got really, really lean, and he's like, "We're gonna start from square one." Like I think the first like cycle design that I got from him was like it was like again, like 400 test and like 200 mass. And we just slowly kind of scaled up from there and kind of found, what ratios worked and what amount of testosterone that I could get away with without running into side effects and stuff like that. But he took me and he's like, we're starting again from square one because,
Yeah.
we kind of had nothing to really go off of. There wasn't any anecdotal evidence that we had found from my previous cycle designs or diet or anything like that. So
Well, and obviously, and the biggest part of that, what I was pointing to, is just from a pure like physique development standpoint.
hmm
And I'm definitely not afraid to like talk dosages. I definitely think like, it takes what it takes to make progress at a certain point, depending on who
yeah.
the individual is. But just knowing how well you respond to things, you were using way too much gear for what level of development you were at that point, or needed to keep developing. It was
hmm
like, the Nick doing that was really, really smart, because it's like, hey, we need to reverse this whole process, because you're using way more gear than you need to, because your training sucks, your diet sucks, your,
hmm
organization sucks. And if all those things are like shaky blocks and you're trying to put this huge androgen load on top of it, it's not going to support very well, and you're going to
No.
have a shit show on your hands.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's really great that he did that. And, you saw that in the results and what you were able to, you know, work up to. And, eventually, obviously, as usage did escalate, and, we
Yeah.
can obviously speak on some of those things. But at that time, the amount you were using previously was probably just a little bit outside the ballpark of what you actually needed to make progress if your other variables were intact.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything about the first process was just a little too much for where I was at the time. You know, given I had more muscle on my frame, a little bit more skin in the game at the time, it would have been it could have been okay, but it was a little much to start.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really cool. And you and Nick worked together for almost 3 years, and
hmm
in that time you made a ton of progress. I mean,
hmm
you see that on what we were able to put on stage in Detroit. I'll say that again. Like,
Yeah.
you did your first show at what, like 160 some pounds?
Yeah, I was like 165 pounds on stage. Could I have been leaner? So yeah, it probably would have been like sub 160 on stage
Yeah, and
for
we put
sure.
you on stage at like 200, 201, like
Yeah,
that
yeah. I
area
think I
right
think
there.
prejudging was like 201 on the freaking money, and then finals were like 201. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so I mean, we're talking at least 35 pounds of tissue, probably more, because as you said, you probably could have been leaner. And in Detroit, like, I'll just say it for what it is, no self promo. I don't think you literally could have been leaner than you were without
No.
just emaciating.
Yeah.
So, probably even a bit more than 35 pounds of tissue, which is, again, kudos to Nick, to shout him out one more time. And then obviously, after that off season, we then linked up for that contest prep. And,
hmm
obviously, being full disclosure and honest as we try to be, just some things had gotten to a point where you felt like you needed something a little bit different. I think
hmm
really for you, it really came down to just more, you were in a place, and we'll get into some of those things that I think, I mentioned it earlier, because I think it's important for people to know that despite how good someone looks on stage, despite how well the prep goes, it does not mean that they're not dealing with other things in their
Yeah.
personal lives
Yeah.
at that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I think at that time, because you had some of these things that were really, uh, really, really messing with you, whether it was, mental stuff, like
All
relationship
of it
stuff,
was mental
family
stuff.
stuff, you needed somebody who could be a little bit more present with you. And we'll say it for what it is, guy. Nick has a lot more clients than I do, like a lot more clients than I do.
hmm
And he's further along in his coaching. I might have a ballpark of that number of clients someday. I don't right now. So, Kyle was able to have somebody who's a bit more accessible. I think that was the biggest reason. But, if you want to speak to that, maybe from your
Yeah, and like
perspective.
I mean, I don't think I'm somebody I don't think I'm somebody who really like needs my hand held in most cases, but for me to have like that kind of like big brother uh uh vibe from Colton was kind of everything that I needed at the time. But around the time that I had made that switch when I was starting prep, I wasn't in an amazing financial spot. The job that I was working at the time wasn't making me a ton of money. Um, I was not like fresh out of a relationship, but I had an ex-girlfriend that I lived with for a year. Her family kind of like took me in as one of their own and gave me a place to live for over a year while I was interning and actually not making any money. I was working 40 hours a week, making $0. So they gave me a place to live. And when I had moved up to Minneapolis, I felt super lost. I lived here in my apartment by myself for 2 months before my roommate moved in. I again, like I was kind of in a bad financial situation at the time, and Colton was a really big outlet for me. It was like I feel like every day I was coming to the gym with something to talk about, something that was on my mind, somebody that I needed to bounce stuff off of, and a big thing that I decided to do during that time too was I started going to therapy. I started seeing a therapist just to talk about things and try to learn more about myself and why I was feeling the way I was. Um, because inevitably, being here, living on my own, being so far away from my family, it really caught up to me. And I felt like I had kind of just was losing myself. I was like, what do I want to do with my degree? Is there any way that I'm ever going to be able to make more money? A big thing for me was kind of just like, I guess I wanted to know why I was feeling the way I did about I I'm kind of trying to gather my thoughts here, but I felt at the time like there was a lot of things that I did work for in terms of my relationships and I ditched them. And it seemed like I had this reoccurring uh thing going on where I would have these relationships with people, friendships or actual like intimate relationships. I would do very well. There was never, things that I would do wrong and I would ditch them. And I feel like a lot of it stemmed to do with the loss of my mom. And I don't know, there was a lot going on at the time. And I had gone to therapy for probably like a solid 5 months or so.
Yeah.
And it helped me a lot at the time. And you helped me a lot at the time too. I mean, like I said, you were kind of like that big brother to me. Um, and just, it's like we're only a couple years apart. I think you're only like 3.5 years older than me or something like
Yeah.
that. But you just have all this wisdom, to give me. And that was
I
something
appreciate
huge at the
that.
time. And, you know, yeah, I don't know what else really to say about it, but there was just a lot that I was dealing with at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, I think for me, just seeing you and where you were at, I just wanted to help in any way I could. And I think one thing we should just address quickly, because I've addressed it to other people in private, and I just want to say it publicly. There was never me poaching Kyle or in his ear for him to come over to me because we were best friends. We were trained together. Literally, like, I never once said to Kyle, like, "Oh, man, I'd really like for you to come over to me," anything like that. I never once said that. Even when he started talking about maybe going a different direction, some of the names he was throwing around were like Chris Tuttle, some other people, and, for him, when he told me he was thinking about leaving Nick, it was at the start of prep, and I told him, I'm like, "Dude, you really wanna think about that decision because you're in prep right now. Changing coaches midstream could be a really bad idea." So I actually told him to take more time to think about it. He went
Yeah.
away and thought about decided it was still what he needed at the time, and even when he decided it was still what he needed at the time, I was like, "Yeah, dude, totally get it. What do you think you're gonna do?" And he was like, "Will you prep me?" And so it was I never put it in his head that I should be the one prepping him or I should be the one coaching him. Um, Obviously us being close friends, him seeing what I was doing with my other clients, I'm sure that was a thought he already had in his mind. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Oh, it never crossed his mind until it did." But it was never something I put in his head. Um, there were aspects of things he would ask me for feedback on,
Hmm.
throughout like probably our months of becoming really good friends. And I would give him feedback on those things, but it was never from a standpoint of trying to make him think that he should change horses or anything like that. Um, but I think to go back to what we were talking about, um, just having somebody to talk to, I think was a huge thing. And obviously with clients, you being my best friend, it's a little bit easier to do that because we see each other a couple times a week. But it is something I try to bring into other aspects of my coaching because I think sometimes coaches like do this thing nowadays where they're like, I'm your coach, I'm not your therapist. And that's totally true. Like sometimes I will have clients bring something to me. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, I don't know what to say about that. I'm sorry that your girlfriend threw all your chicken out or whatever. I don't know what the conversation was around that. Um, Try to be logical, like try to cooler heads prevail, but I can't always give like the perfect feedback on things like that to everyone. But I do try to be a place that someone can at least feel like they can maybe express how they're feeling at the very
Mhm.
least and be like, hey man, like I've had a rough week. I'm just feeling a little bit lost right now. And maybe I can pick them up in some way. But obviously you can't do that for everyone, but I think that was a huge part of our relationship developing is that we did see each other in person. We talked a lot and you were going through a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's like I said, and I'll say it again, is like you were just that person of wisdom that I had in my life at the time when I needed it most. And this isn't like you know shitting on him or anything, but like sometimes, I try to talk to my dad about how I'm feeling. He's just like, you'll be all right. And it's kind of like one of those things, like he's just a guy, like he doesn't have a lot to provide, or he didn't have a lot to provide to me in that moment. And I didn't have any other really like super close friends that I was able to just talk to and vent to. And you were really, really somebody at that time that you know took me under your wing and just it was able to provide a lot for me that I needed. So
Yeah, well, I think I'm able to do that because I've pretty much fucked up in every conceivable way in my life at this point. So realistically, that's true. Like some of the things that we would talk about were things I'm like, yeah, dude, I've been there, I've done this. Like, don't do that. You know what I mean?
hmm
And it's funny too because the one thing that ended up making us work together was something that I've like, bro, I've been there, done that, like thinking about like, coach hopping at the wrong time. Don't do it. And then you did it anyway. And lo and behold,
yeah,
here we are. But
yeah.
it's kind of funny how that works. But yeah, dude, like let's get into it. Let's talk about the Detroit prep. So initially when you started prep, you were supposed to be competing in February. So you started prep
Yeah,
at what was 24 weeks out for Detroit in when it was in February.
yeah,
And then it'd be like 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks into prep. They moved the show back a whole month.
yeah.
Um,
So we did a 28-week prep. Yeah,
yeah, which
long
is
prep.
it brings up an interesting conversation because like a lot of people have seen your progress and they're like, oh my gosh, like when's the rebound over or whatever. I'm like, he didn't rebound. Like we couldn't. Not that we couldn't, like your health was in a pretty good spot considering post prep.
Yeah.
Uh Pretty much the only thing that was skewed for you was liver enzymes, which, with some
hmm
oral usage at then kind of
Rightfully
makes
so.
sense. Lipids could have been better. They weren't horrible, but you also ate your face off for a couple days right before getting that
Yeah,
set of lab work. And we
yeah.
found
That's
that
one thing.
we pulled those labs again like a few weeks later and his lipids were already like down a
Yeah,
shitload.
we'll talk about that too. Fuck.
So yeah, we'll get into some of that stuff. So it was not the easiest thing to manage post show. We didn't go straight into a live in a box rebound where
Mm-mm.
prep was the halfway point because quite frankly, he had been on cycle for 28 weeks. And I was like, dude, I don't really want to keep you on cycle for 6 more weeks just to rebound here. But we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
But starting prep at 28 weeks out. So man, long time to be in prep. How'd that feel for you kind of getting towards the end? I know like there are probably some
Dude.
days where you're like, holy shit, I'm still doing this.
Yeah, dude, it felt like so much by the end when I had like when I was like 2 weeks out and I had thought about all the time that had passed and kind of where I was at when I had started prep to where I was at by the time I was ending it felt like so much time had passed and it was pretty crazy and I mean, I've never done anything for that long. You know what I mean? Besides like held a job or held a relationship, like I've never done anything every single darn day, like held it that long. And
That's
I
what
mean, I was really,
illustrates.
what's that?
So that's what Alyssa said.
I was really proud of it by the end. But I was definitely just doggone tired by the end of prep.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we made the decision we did to like reverse out of it. I know that like, you know, a big thing for some people is like, let's rebound, let's use this time wisely, let's, you know, keep going with what we're doing, use that show day as the halfway point and rebound out and try to put on size right away. And there was no way in hell I was doing
I think
that.
you were
I'm gonna be so
even just
honest.
from a, like setting lab work aside, like because your health was in a pretty decent spot. If like honestly, if some of the post show eating stuff hadn't happened for you, like in that just like and again, guys, Kyle got back on track very quickly. It was just kind of like
Yeah,
the first week. We'll get into it because the travel
yeah.
home was a shit show, and that's
Oh,
kind
that
of
was
part of the
fun.
reason it happened. Um, was in a good spot, but I just think mentally you had just put so much into that last 28 weeks. There's no way you were like battening
Yeah,
down the hatches for another
yeah.
6 weeks. And because the thing is about rebounding people is like, has conversation with Tyler because we're going to rebound after TCO. I'm like, dude, for this to work, basically you'll enjoy some things post show the first couple days, but it's like, we have to be on the money. Like
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
like prep is extending like 6
Hmm.
weeks for this
Yeah,
to
for
work.
sure.
And there was just no way in hell I think mentally that would have been feasible just with how long of a prep it ended up being
Hmm.
for you.
Yeah.
Um
I truthfully don't know how people stay in prep for like 28 plus 30 weeks, you know, doing multiple shows on end. Like that's crazy to me.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
one day I'm sure I'll be there and I'll do it. But
Yeah. Yeah, once you're running the pro circuit, right? But
yeah,
yeah, super long prep. And that's kind of funny too, because it brings up like one of the first things we did when you started with me is it was literally Thanksgiving. And I was like, yeah, just go eat Thanksgiving, dude.
hmm,
Like, cause you had already been
hmm,
dieting for like fuck, like 6 or 7 weeks at that point. You were in a
hmm,
pretty good spot. And I was just like, yeah, dude, like go have your Thanksgiving. It's like this is not gonna affect whether we're
hmm.
able to get in shape or not.
Yeah, that was
Um,
nice.
yeah. Kind of speaking to like what were some of the things from your perspective that changed the most when we started rolling? I definitely think I'm the type of person and type of coach that like if I get somebody from a different coach, I don't want to change everything out the
Yeah,
gate because it's like it can really throw them from a loop and really mess up
yeah,
any amount of momentum they have. But what were
yeah,
some
yeah.
of the things from your perspective that changed and that you either enjoyed, maybe even didn't enjoy?
I remember you saying that to me is that I don't want to change everything because you are in prep. I was like 18 weeks out at the
Mm,
time that I had made the switch over to you, and I remember
I
that
think
being a big thing
19.
for you, something like that, 19, 20, whatever. But that was one thing you said is like I don't want to change everything, but the biggest thing that changed was the diet for sure. And not like, you know, obviously still eating chicken and rice and you know, some similar sources that way, but adding in things. We added the kombucha, we added the Greek yogurt, we added the sauerkraut, we added a lot more veggies, a lot more fruit than what I had been used to eating. And that was a huge change that I noticed within days of running your diet was my digestion improved so much so quickly. You know, I didn't really notice that I had diet or gut maybe issues at the time, but dude, I was shitting like fucking 5 times a day. And I didn't really think it was a problem. I was just like, I'm eating a lot of food. I'm a
Well, I'm
bodybuilder.
sure
You're
it
gonna
wasn't like a problem as far as like fat loss or muscle gain or anything like
no.
that. But the biggest reason I do like to incorporate some of those things is just like if we're able to digest our food better, theoretically it's going to make the process run smoother.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is a large cohort of people in bodybuilding who go a little bit too far with those things, like where they think everybody has a digestive issue. Like
Yeah.
realistically, in my whole time coaching, I've only had a couple cases where I really had to actually like take someone through a real meaningful gut fix
Yeah.
in almost 7 years of doing this. But anyway, to continue off that,
Yeah, no, that was the one change that made the biggest impact for me right off the bat was the diet change. And it was I felt significantly better very quickly. Um, I don't think a ton had changed training wise. in terms of what I was doing at the time. Now, obviously, that we're in our off season, we're a little bit more focused on weak points, and my split is completely different than things that I've done in the past. Which, if we have time, we can get to it. I'm really enjoying it so far. And then yeah, the gear protocol pretty much stayed the same, and obviously we changed things as we went, to
Yeah.
match to what we were trying to do. But yeah, it was the diet in general that was the
Yeah.
big change and the thing I loved the most, honestly.
Yeah, I think with training, we didn't really change your whole split. The only thing we did
I
change
remember.
initially was just we added in more arm volume because you weren't doing
Yeah,
that
yeah,
much
yeah.
arms.
I wasn't
And
doing any
at
arms.
the time, they're getting like they're starting to become a good part of your physique, but your arms were very weak at the time. And I was like, dude, if we keep dieting and we're only doing this much arm volume, you're gonna have some pretty small arms by the end
Yeah,
of
we're gonna
prep.
lose them.
Um, and again, it wasn't blasting volume through the roof, but being like, hey, on this pull day, like, why don't we just throw in 2 sets of biceps or 3 sets of
Hmm.
biceps, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Moving like one of your days to having some arm training on the front end. Like it's very simple stuff. We didn't change the whole split architecture. And no, like a lot of people will be like, oh, you went to a coach, like what's their drug protocol? This, that. Like me and Nick are very similar in how
Oh yeah,
we
for sure.
approach PEDs and stuff. Um, so the cycle design didn't really change. Like obviously, as prep goes, cycle design can change and
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
But the compounds that were in place did not change. I mean, I think to start prep, and I can look at your sheet here real quick. I think to start prep, uh, we were running yeah, test mass EQ, and we ran test mass EQ the
The
entire way through
entire
prep.
time.
So the obviously the amounts of those things did change progressively
Mhm,
throughout prep.
mhm.
Um but that being said, like compound selection didn't change. Um one thing that I know did change is we ended up leveraging growth hormone a lot more than you had in the past.
Yes. Yeah. I think, yeah, we increased my growth hormone dosage a little bit as compared to what I was doing before, but that was, I think that was a big driver for fat loss, and that's something that we've, driven up a little bit more with this off season coming up, that we're running now is more growth hormone usage.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with you for Detroit that we learned too was that you get in shape really quick, like really
Hmm.
fast.
Hmm.
So in the future, we're not going to be prepping 28 weeks. We might not even be prepping 20 weeks. Preps might be very fast in the future because you get in shape very, very quick. Food was very high for most of prep. It doesn't change how you feel. If you're lean, you're still going to feel like shit at the end, but
Yeah.
food was very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
high for most of prep.
Yeah.
If you kind of want to speak to that, like I think we were probably like refeeding at least like 2, 3, 4 times a week, sometimes like
Hmm.
days
Hmm.
of like 6, 7, 800 grams of carbs. So
Hmm.
if you kind of want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, throughout prep, I didn't have to do a whole ton of cardio. I
Yeah.
think the lowest my food got was like 2,500 calories, which isn't, is not extremely low. But like you said, if you're that lean, you're gonna feel kind of shitty.
Yeah.
It's just the name of the
But
game. I
even when
think.
we were doing that, we still ended up refeeding you like multiple times. Anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, no. But the diet aspect of things, it didn't really get to where I was having like meals with no carbs in them or anything like that. I know you see guys where it's just like protein and veg in the morning and at night and stuff before they're going to bed. For me, I had carbs in every meal, you know. That was something that I wasn't used to. And I honestly, like, to be honest, towards the end, I hit this imposter syndrome at one point. I was like, why the fuck am I still eating carbs in all my meals? Why am I not having a diet like most other people do, where you got to dive below 2,000 calories, stuff like that. And I remember just like getting to a point where I was just like, am I trying hard enough? Like, am I doing enough? Because it's like we had just managed the timeline specifically so well that I didn't really need to crash myself into the show. I mean, it was probably like 3 weeks out that we had started going back up with food, and we're able to really, really feed ourselves into the show. And it's, and I was saying this to Alyssa, I think it was like last week. I was like, and prep is hard, but prep could have been much harder. There's definitely like I don't know how to say this without people like thinking that I'm gonna sound like I didn't try very hard, but I tried really hard. It was just like if I needed to knock it into another gear, like I feel like I could have, but I just didn't need to.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to say that. It's not like I'm not coming from an aspect of like, I didn't try very hard because I showed up on stage fucking lean. I mean, I won the thing. But we didn't, I don't think we went above 40 minutes of cardio, 45 minutes of cardio.
Yeah, and even that was for a very short stretch of time. But
Very
one thing
short
I
stretch
will
of
say
time.
for people watching there, like, oh, why is my coach have me doing this if Kyle didn't have to? Guys, you have to understand too, though, like Kyle's a very specific example. I have a lot of people prepping or prep that have to suffer like far, far worse than Kyle. Again, this just speaks to specifically like if we had set the timeline up poorly, we probably still would have had to go there, even though he has a body type that doesn't necessarily need to.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He has a very, very fast metabolism. We didn't even, because we were pulling labs the whole time through prep, to reference, we didn't even put in thyroid until like 6 weeks out
Yeah.
because his thyroid just did not downregulate, even though
Mm-hmm.
he was already really lean. Because Kyle probably could have stepped on stage and been the most conditioned person at any regional show like 5 weeks out, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And I think my timeline being as long as it was too really helped us in not needing to pull things down is
Yeah,
far.
for sure.
I mean, given the next prep we do, if it's like 12, anywhere from like 12 to 16 weeks, I could definitely see us having to
Yeah,
pull food
absolutely.
down a little more cardio and things like that. But we had such a long timeline that there was just really no point in doing so.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's where you start prep too, like, uh, you know, you started prep probably like a little bit softer than I would like you to start prep next time. So
Yeah.
that's a consideration too. We might not have to just because I'm not gonna have you start prep super soft because
Yeah.
I want to be able to prep fast.
Yeah.
Um,
I started prep
but
eating a lot of double quarter pounders, bro.
yeah. Hey, dude, Tom was talking about that the other day that Mike Nassif had a guy who got absolutely nutty peeled and was eating McDonald's the whole prep. And that's something
Dude,
that
I
that's
listened to that.
something I want to play with you with around with next time because we didn't really do many free meals. And I've had a lot of clients right now in prep that I'm doing a lot of free meals with, and it's going quite
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So I think that just in my previous education and stuff, and you know me, like I'm very, very like no bullshit. Like I don't love like the crazy off-plan eating in the off-season stuff,
Hmm.
but I actually am using off-plan meals more so in prep because I'm seeing really good responses from it. And so like you get some of the people in like the more educational crowd that are like, oh, they have no place, like just use more clean food, like et cetera, et cetera. But I'm seeing such good results of it that I definitely think we'll play around with like some, maybe throwing a Five Guys at you, throwing a McDonald's at you, next prep, whatever it is, or a
Yeah.
sushi, for sure. We definitely have the runway to do it because, like I said, you get in shape really quick. But
Yeah.
yeah, just basically, the next kind of area I want to get into with that Detroit prep because I think it's something a lot of people can learn from. And if you don't mind talking about it, you don't think she minds talking about it. Your current girlfriend, you
Hmm.
guys started dating in at the start of prep,
Yeah.
ended up parting ways, and now you guys have
Yeah.
come back together. And I just want to shout out Alyssa because she was a massive help to you prep, even though you guys did part ways, which
Uh-huh.
was more on you than
Oh
on
God.
her
Yeah.
and like
Oh
where
my
your
God. Yeah.
where your mental was at the
Yeah.
time. And I'll say that as your big brother, I can say that it was
Oh
more
God.
on you
Yeah.
than her. She
Full permission.
still was there for you the entire way, even though you basically broke her heart in prep. She still was there for you the entire way. So massive shout out to Alyssa,
Yeah.
and how much of a rock she's really been for you. And I'm glad to see you guys are doing well now. But if you
Hmm.
want to get into that at all, we can.
Yeah. I mean, dude, again, that kind of stems back to the point where I was at when I started prep and when I had made the switch over to you. I was going to therapy at the time still while her and I had started seeing each other and started dating. And I just I got I don't know. For me, it was just a big mental thing. I had gotten in my head so bad that I was like, I feel like at the time I had felt like she was light years ahead of me where I was as a person, trying to figure out my life and stuff. Like, she had a much more successful career going for her, and it seemed like she really had things figured out. And I remember talking to some people at the gym, and they were like, Kyle, like, you got to understand, you are 24 years old. You don't need to have it figured out. I understand you feel like you need to have it figured out, but you don't. Nobody has it figured out. And
I
they
didn't
were
have
like,
shit figured out at
and
24.
yeah, and they were like, I'm 32 years old and I don't have shit figured out. I don't know what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now. I didn't know I was going to be in the position that I'm in right now at 32, and or however old they are. I just threw that number out there. But that was the big thing haunting me at the time, and it's like I felt like I couldn't go to bed at night without feeling like I was just not in the right position at the time. And, I made the decision I did. We broke up and I ran prep by myself, which I felt like, I mean, obviously with you, and I had you as a backbone there for me for all of it, and Joey as well. You guys were
But really
fucking
her too.
troopers.
Like there was a period where you guys didn't talk, and then towards the end of prep, like she was
Yeah.
really there for you. But anyway,
Yeah.
continue with
Again.
the
Yeah.
thought you were having.
Yeah, but I honestly like part of me feels like the big chunk of prep that I did do on my own was really, really good to me. And there was a lot of, I wasn't working as many hours at the time and I had a lot of time to myself. Prep is one of those times where you do a lot of thinking. You're on the treadmill a lot. I'm somebody who like doesn't really listen to music on the treadmill sometimes. There were a lot of times where I would be at iron and I'd be on the front row of treadmills and I'd be staring at the mirror in front of me, watching myself walk on the treadmill, just thinking. There would be times in the morning where I'd wake up, stare at the wall, and I'd just be thinking, or resting on the couch, whatever. And I feel like doing it somewhat independently really helped me come to where I am now, helped me become part of who I am now and be able to hold, just more respect for myself and where I'm at in my life. Because truthfully, I feel like, you got to have a sense of pride in where you're at, right? You didn't get here without some trials and tribulations, as we can see. And I don't know. There was a lot of work that I did on myself. There was a lot of work that I did throughout prep, trying to find a career path that was going to be more sustainable and more rewarding for me. And where I'm at now in my life is so much different than where I was at, 8 months ago or whatever when I started prep. And I'm just it's something I'm really, really proud of, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think to kind of speak to the relationship aspect of it, I think that as much as I was like, oh, it's like on you, it was not as much on her, like, which is
Mhm.
true. I do think, and me and Alyssa have talked about this, like, I think it was important that things happened the way that they did. Because
Yeah,
I
and
think that you guys are so much further along now than you
oh
would
God,
have been because of that.
we appreciate each other's company and we appreciate each other's goals and where we're at in our lives so much more because of it. And I think it's truthfully it's drawn us a lot closer. I mean, the way our relationship had been going then to where we're at now, it's night and day, to be honest. It's great and it's beautiful and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, no. But anyway, I just wanted to speak to that because I
Yeah,
think a
absolutely.
lot of times, like, relationships, like there's some people in the background that don't get as much praise as they should for the process of prep. Usually the athlete gets the praise, maybe the coach gets some of that praise, but like even just Lauren, like how much she supported me through that prep, because like, you know, there were some days where I knew you needed me to be at the gym and I
Hmm.
was there until 7 p.m. and she's at home with our, 6 5 month old baby, whatever it was
Hmm.
at the time. So there, people like that don't always get enough praise. And I wanted Alyssa to kind of get a shout out from that because
Oh,
she's been
absolutely.
she's been awesome.
Yeah, she'll appreciate that.
Alyssa Stinson on Instagram. That's Kyle's. Are you guys boyfriend and girlfriend again? Or are you guys
Yeah.
labeled up? You're
Yeah.
labeled up.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's Alyssa's girl or Kyle's girlfriend. But yeah, dude, and just so you know, guys, it wasn't because the trend went in. The trend didn't go in until like way after all that happened. When did we put Trent in? Maybe like 6 weeks out, I
Something
think.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't a lot because,
We started
he
talking again when I was on the trend, actually.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I got him back in the fold. But yeah, I mean, we'll get into the nitty-gritty here, and then we'll talk some
Yeah.
off-season stuff and call
Sure.
it good.
Sure.
I think people are gonna get a lot out of this already, and
Yeah.
hopefully they enjoy it because this has been a really fun conversation. I think this is really the only time we've really picked all this apart and like talked about it in this much depth. Like I think
No, it's good.
there's nothing like, guys, this is all off just the top. Like we're just talking about this and reminiscing right now, and this is all off the top. But um yeah, so compound usage in prep, like I said, like we kind of had our test base. I believe we worked testosterone up at the initial parts of prep to like I believe it was like somewhere between 600 and 700 milligrams, something like
Yep,
that.
exactly. Yeah, I was gonna say
Um
700. Yeah.
yeah, I think like 700, and then we had Masteron at 300 and
Yep.
EQ at 400. So that was kind of what we ran for the oh, okay, test went to 750. I'm looking at it right now.
Oh,
750 test, 300 mass, 400 EQ. And that's what we ran for most of prep. Was that and 8 IUs of growth hormone was what we ran for most of prep. As far as lipolytics, we leveraged this Clen like pretty modestly. I think you maybe only went up to 80 micrograms, like maybe for a week or two towards the end of prep, maybe not
yeah.
even.
I don't even. I think I only did 60.
Yeah. So we leveraged a little bit Clen. One thing that I think made a huge difference for you, got a great response from it, was the mitochondrial peptides, actually running some MOTS and some SLU.
Yeah, dude. And looking back, like I'm excited for the next prep because I'll be able to afford those things much more. And
Mm.
I want to, I want to be able to run those things and do some trials with them throughout prep. Cause I know there was a point where I'm just like, Colton, like, listen, man, this is
Yeah.
going to break the bank for me a little bit. And I don't want to.
Yeah.
And you're like, don't worry about it. We don't have to. It's just another lever to pull.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited to try those things out a little bit more. I know there's so much, people think peptides are woo woo in this, but like, it was a big driver for me when we were
Yeah,
using
it
the
worked.
SLU and the MOTS.
Especially early in prep too, like when we added in SLU and then we added in some MOTS like a couple weeks later, like your
Yeah.
body composition, we changed nothing. Like we were still refeeding as frequently. Cardio didn't really change much. Drugs didn't really change much. Clen, I probably think, was maybe around like 40 micrograms at the time,
At the
pretty
time. Yep.
static. And your body composition just started changing like really quick. It was
Mhm.
almost like it made everything around it work better. And that's kind of what I see with a lot of people when we utilize them, is almost like
Yeah.
there's some sort of like synergy between like you have Clen maybe driving like some of that that resting metabolic rate through like the beta cells, so you're kind of getting that upregulation, and then you maybe have like your thyroid, which we didn't have in place at the time, but you have your thyroid keeping that metabolism also upregulated, and then you throw in these mitochondrial peptides, and it's almost like they're creating you know this extra energy, like fat loss burn, without also further elevating things like heart rate and stuff. And I just see people change really quickly with them. I'm a really big fan at this point. I know some people are a little bit iffy on them just because there's not as much research, but there's also not a lot of research on guys taking 2 grams of gear. So, you know what? And people do that pretty flippantly. So,
Yeah.
anyway, that being said, that was a pretty big deal for you. And we didn't really push those too hard. Like I myself right now in my fat loss phase, because I'm not utilizing any like Clen or thyroid or anything, I'm running like 200 plus milligrams of SLU a day. I think the highest you went was like 1.5 milligrams or something like that. And
Yeah.
you saw a
If
really big
that.
benefit. But it's
Yeah.
interesting because Tom was talking about this on a podcast the other day, that almost for some people, like, and he saw it with himself, that he got really good benefit from like a milligram. And then he's done as high as like 200 plus milligrams, and he didn't see like a huge difference. So I'll be interested to see, because we'll probably push that lever a bit harder in the future and run some actual like 50 milligram, maybe even 100 milligram or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'll be
Yeah.
interested to see if I notice much of a difference. I don't know why that would be. You'd think more would be more in most contexts, but I guess we'll find out.
Not
But I
always
thought
the
that
case.
was the
Yeah.
interesting part.
Yeah.
We did
Yeah.
not run
Definitely.
Retatrutide in prep.
Nope.
We're using some Retatrutide right now, but
Yeah.
we did not
Yeah.
run Retatrutide in prep.
Eating as much as I am is crazy to say, but yeah, we're doing half a milligram of Reta a day or a week.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we did not use it in prep. Just with how much food you were eating, I just really didn't see a need for it. I think
Mhm.
we might play around with it in future preps, but the other aspect of that is too is like, if you have somebody who's a really high metabolic burner like you are, you ask yourself the question, if you kind of bring something like that in, especially with like the glucagon impact and stuff, now am I having to refeed you even more? Maybe we're getting some slower motility. Like, could it be the wrong drug for the application for
Yeah.
that person?
Yeah.
And that's the ultimately the reason I decided not to use it, because we had it on hand. We
Yeah.
could have
Yeah. I
put
had
it
it the whole
in.
time. Yeah.
And I just was like, I just didn't really see a need for it. But yeah, I thought the SLU and the MOTS stuff was interesting because we saw a huge benefit from that.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
basically what we did, Kyle was saying that we didn't run it towards the end of prep because just financially didn't want to spend money on it. We did it kind of in the earlier stages of prep, and it almost like really accelerated a good like 4 to 6 week chunk in the early part of
Yep.
prep. And all of a sudden we were like, oh shit, we're really ahead right
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, compound usage wise, just because I know people like to hear about this, we kind of already talked about some of this stuff. Interestingly enough, like pulling labs throughout prep, we found some things with your blood work that we corrected, like, a little bit of like folate deficiency,
Yeah.
B12 deficiency, some things like that, which really helped with blood work towards the end of prep, being as good as it was. And then things like tren, we didn't add in tren until about 6 weeks out, and we added in at 50, and we only went as high
50.
as 75.
Yep.
We didn't go any higher than that. And then we added in Anavar probably 5 weeks
I think it
out,
was
I
five
want to
weeks
say,
out. Yeah. And Winstrol shortly
pre-training,
after.
and then we added in a dose in the early afternoon as well. So
Yep.
we went up to 50 milligrams there. And then the last couple weeks of prep, we added in Winstrol.
Yeah.
Um, and that was it. That was our prep stack design. We didn't use any AIs because we adjusted stack design.
Hmm.
So what we did is, Kyle is a pretty naturally dry person, just wanted to see if there was a little bit more we could do as far as limiting aromatization. So we popped in an AI for a couple days. He got tighter for the first couple days. By the third day, he looked like a bag of dog shit. So I was like, okay, we can rebalance this a little bit, but I don't want to go too far because I don't want you to lose like some of that fullness that you
Yeah.
lost. So what
Yeah.
we did was we just bumped test down by about like,
I think it
um
was, we bumped it down to 450.
yeah, so maybe a bit more aggressive than
Yeah.
I'm remembering.
Yeah. I
And
don't
then
remember off the top of my
we
head.
just filled back in with Masteron from there,
Yep.
and he was looking better and better by the week. So we just didn't touch it
Yeah.
um
Rocked it.
until the end, and we didn't do any AIs week of the show. Um, I think there's a reason with some people for maybe increasing something like Winstraw, utilizing some AIs the week of the show, but honestly, he was as hard as we needed him to be, and we were like, we want to swing for the fences with fullness was
Hmm.
actually what we wanted to do. So one compound that we definitely used that we
I was
found was
hoping you'd say this.
amazing for Kyle from a cosmetic perspective was some good old A bombs,
Hmm.
some anadrol. So
Hmm.
yeah, if you want to talk about that, that was a pretty instant like eureka moment when we trialed it on that refeed, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
when we like were going to mock peak, I think it was like 3 weeks out or 4 weeks out or
right,
something like that. And I had taken an Anadrol. We went to train and I was like, oh my gosh. We just hit
yeah,
like a light back and biceps or something like that. And I was like, I remember the pictures on my Instagram. I just
yeah. Let's
fucking
pull those up because
hard, grainy.
people will know the infamous red underwear pictures are the
Yeah, dude.
anadrol pictures.
I'm glad you know it too. Oh, that's
These
so funny.
pictures,
Yeah, the one on
these are
the one on the
these
right there. Yeah.
this was like towards the start of prep, but these are the infamous anadrol pictures when we found out that that was going to be a big thing for him. Just freaking full as a
Hmm.
house to the back. Cause so the big thing for Kyle is when he gets flat, his back flattens out a ton, like
Hmm.
a ton. And when he was hitting these poses in the posing rooms, I was just like, yeah, we are definitely doing that again,
Hmm.
on show day.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that was a huge game changer for me. It was
yeah.
awesome. I felt like a fucking I don't even know. I don't even know. I felt crazy.
Yeah. So for anybody watching who's not familiar, this is Kyle's look at his first show, and then this was us at Detroit. And then when we were pumping up backstage in Detroit, when we, because we did some Anadrol before prejudging, we did some Anadrol before finals. I think we did some Androl the Friday before as well too, right? I think so. I think we
I don't
took it.
remember. I think you're right. Yeah.
I think we did it like kind of same timing when
Yeah.
prejudging would be and when
Yeah.
finals would be on
Yep.
Friday. And
Yep.
then
Yep.
on the day of the show, we did prejudging finals. When he was pumping up backstage, I literally watched him just start expanding like a balloon.
Dude, my
It
fucking
was
pump hurt
crazy.
backstage. I
Yeah, and
remember
you
that.
weren't even pumping that hard either, which I
No,
think is a
no.
mistake a lot of people make. You were just kind of doing some push-ups, doing some bicep curls with the band, and you got to a point where you're like, dude, I'm good. I'm just gonna literally sit here till they call us out. You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, so for some people, maybe Androl's not going to be the best compound. Maybe it can bring some extra water retention. But for Kyle, didn't really seem to make a difference, just only helped us.
Yeah,
Right. So
don't some people peak with super draw rather than anadrol? I've kind of heard a little bit of both.
yeah, some people do, and that's definitely something I'd like to try with you in the future
Sure.
is going with super draw instead of androl. I
Yeah.
like super draw is kind of one of those compounds like I'm really only going to use it for peaking because it can be very, very harsh on
Yeah.
like liver enzymes and obviously the liver. Uh Anadrol is something that, if somebody's blood pressure is not a concern, I'm a little bit more open to maybe deploying it strategically in like an off-season setting or something
Mhm.
like that. But uh, you know, I think it's like gets a rap for being super liver toxic, but like we saw like your liver enzymes like pulled pretty close to the end of prep, like you're um fuck. I can't remember off the top of my head, guys. Somebody's gonna correct me. Whatever the less concerning one was just
AST or ALT? I don't remember.
I can't I know this, but I can't remember off the top of my head right now. This
Brain
podcast
fart.
about being honest, guys, I can't remember off the top of my head. The less concerning one was like at 150, and the other one wasn't elevated at all.
Yeah.
And none of your other like liver markers were elevated. GGT was fine. Uh, you know, all the other markers were fine. So I
Mhm.
think Androl kind of gets this rap for being like super duper liver toxic. And I don't think it is as long as it's used in like very short durations. I think that's with any orals though. Like you just can't be on them for long periods of time, right? Um, but anyway, that was kind of it in a nutshell for prep. We didn't use any diuretics. Not saying I'm against using diuretics, just Kyle's physique just isn't a physique that needs to be
Didn't need it.
diuretic.
Yeah.
So no diuretics. Yeah, but that's prep, dude. You have any thoughts kind of about any of that? Anything we talked about with regards to prep?
I think like I kind of said it earlier, but I think the biggest thing that I realized through your process and that I realized through seeing some other people's processes throughout different preps is just timeline is very big, and timeline is something that should be just paid attention to. I mean, it was the best way for us to manage my fatigue, the best way for us to be in shape early and then be able to walk me into the show quite literally the way we did. I think it's something that is, I'm not as well versed as a coach like you are, but I think it's something that people miss on time and time again is the timeline. And I think that's the biggest thing that helped me keep a level head, honestly, throughout the process. It's like, we were ready early. It wasn't something that I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to be in shape like 3 weeks out? Something that I was worrying about. It was like 3 weeks out, I was in shape and we were ready to rip.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as a coach, you get your opportunities to do that and you get your opportunities to do the opposite. I think you have to
100%.
have a deep bag. Like I definitely have some people in prep that we're working on a little bit of a shorter timeline, right?
Yeah.
And we have different expectations though for what that look is going to bring,
Yeah.
right? For you, like a big thing for us is like what you told me at the start of prep is you're like, I want to be fucking skinless. Like absolutely and when you pulled back into that shot I just showed, people literally audibly gasped in the auditorium.
Yeah.
Kyle was, and I'm biased obviously, but Kyle was one of the leanest athletes on that stage that day, amateur or pro.
Mhm.
Uh yeah, but anyway, yeah, managing timeline, super huge portion. Let's spend like 5-10 minutes and just chat about what's on the horizon for us here, and then we'll call her an episode, dude.
Yeah,
Um
dude.
so off season, man. So off season right now, guys. Our game plan, and I'm like we've been pretty open about what our plan is. We're thinking probably USA's next summer
Mhm.
is probably our game plan.
Yeah.
Kyle won a show this year, so he shouldn't have to requalify. But if we're feeling spicy, we might do a regional anyway if we're feeling like it's a good idea
Yeah.
to do two shows. Um so USA's is the game plan. Right now we're in our push phase. So Kyle took about a 6-ish week health phase after the show. We pulled lab work. Lab work was great. And where it needed to be. So we pulled the trigger on getting back into a push. Um right now we've kind of escalated to what's probably going to be your peak androgen load for this push quicker. I'm a bigger fan of that these days, especially with more advanced athletes not doing like the super slow escalation. Like we know what he's ran in the past, we know what's worked in the past, we know like for him to take another step forward because he has all those other variables dialed in, more is going to be used, but it's not a ton more than what you've used in the past by any means. But androgens are about where they might be, unless, of course, with the EQ in place, we start noticing a little bit more like low estrogen symptoms because we were noticing some joints a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
anyway, I'll cut to the chase. Right now, he's running a gram of test, 500 EQ, and 150 NPP.
Yep.
Right now, we added in the NPP about a week ago because he was starting to notice his joints a little. We wanted to see what that would do first. If we continue to notice that, you've been feeling kind of good since.
Yeah, my knees have been feeling better. I was talking with Dan about this today, and I feel like most of the joint pain, especially at the knees, comes from just being on my feet all day at work, bro. And that's one thing I've been
Yeah.
trialing and erroring with some different
You're on your
things. I
feet a
got
lot at work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm operating on a table on somebody for quite a few hours at a time. It can be up to. But I've been trying different shoes. I've been trying compression socks. I've been trying recovery slides, which has actually helped me a lot. I've been wearing these like foam slides outside of work, and that's helped me a lot. But also too, just another thing is like getting the body work done. I feel like has helped. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah. No, for sure. I think it's maybe not just like lower E2. I think it's a bunch of factors. Like A, you've never been this heavy with this much muscle on your
ever.
frame before. You're on your feet a lot at work. But if we notice that there's room, we might make like one more increase to testosterone. If it's
Hmm.
kind of getting towards the end of our timeline for this push, maybe we'll consider using like something that's going to help us out a little bit quicker, like a test probe or something like that.
Sure.
To increase those milligrams, but we're just gonna chill here. So 1.6, 1.65 grams of total gear. Um, the biggest thing that I think has been moving the needle for you this growth phase is again leveraging growth hormone.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, dude. Yeah, we're doing 10 units a day right now of just good old generic stuff. But that has been, I think, the biggest needle driver for me for sure, and especially just from off season in the past. I feel like that's been huge.
Yeah, yeah, and I think growth hormone gets a bad rap. I don't know why. Like I think some people don't do the best with it and that's fine if they don't want to run as much or run it at all. But if somebody does really well with it, it doesn't cause like super crazy water retention, which it doesn't for you. Like
No, not at
your
all.
ankles are rarely like that puffy unless you've been on your feet literally all day. Causing massive issues with blood pressure or something like that. As long as it doesn't there, like it's very benign from a health impact, or unless you have existing cancer, which you know, most people unfortunately aren't going to know that either way.
Yeah,
And it's hard to say,
yeah.
what the impact would have been once they find out. Um, and so, from a health impact, we look at growth hormone, and as long as you're managing like blood glucose and insulin sensitivity, it's much less impactful on health, and we're able to get a lot more out of less androgens. And
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
really why I really wanted to leverage that with Kyle is because he and growth hormone do very well together, as we found out
Yeah,
in prep.
dude, growth hormone, when I started growth hormone, it was like, I remember Nick telling me, he's like, dude, this is your fucking miracle grow.
Yeah. 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 Well, even just going from 6 to 8 units in prep and then going from 8 to 10 into this off season, it's literally been like a stepwise progress process where I've literally just watched your physique start to morph after like 3 or 4 weeks of making that
Yeah,
increase. So
yeah.
it works very well for you. So that's something we've done differently and we're leveraging like a good bit of insulin right now. Now, again, we're not just like putting an insulin amount in and chasing like a carbohydrate amount. It's because Kyle's requires a lot of food. And
Mhm.
running this much growth hormone, insulin, I think, is going to be kind of a part of that picture, just purely from a glucose management standpoint and like a insulin sensitivity management standpoint. But in addition, I think it does have some very good benefits for performance, growth, all those things. So that's something we've been doing different. Yeah. But any thoughts about this off season?
No, man.
Let it rip, man. I feel like I've
I'm
been talking too much.
No, no, you're good. You're good. You've got a lot of things to say. There's no problem with that. I am honestly like, I feel like I've never been so on the ball in my life
That's what we should talk about.
with just everything, dude. I mean, I'm working hard at work. I'm working hard in the gym. I am, I come home from a long day. I eat my last meal. I shower. I take my drugs and I go to bed and I wake up and I do it the next day. And I've never enjoyed the monotony of this lifestyle so much in my life. And you know, I think you can quite literally see the benefits physically of just living that monotonous lifestyle. I'm so excited for this off season to give me what it does, see what we can do with this off season, and do it again next year on a national stage. I'm fucking pumped.
Yeah, that's the last thing I'll kind of leave off with as a topic because we didn't touch on it the whole episode, which I kind of had in my mind to talk about actually coming in is just like how your process has really changed as a bodybuilder. And Nick was a
Hmm.
huge piece of that too. But I think
Oh
even when you
yeah.
got to me, because I could see you in person, maybe in a way Nick couldn't. Like I told you very early on when we were just friends, I was like, dude, you're gonna be a pro bodybuilder someday if you take this shit seriously.
Hmm.
Um, and just like you've been treating yourself like a professional since then. Post show, travel home was a shit show. We
Yeah.
our flight got canceled from a snowstorm. We ended up staying with Kyle's parents. There was a few more off-plan meals than I would have liked post
Same.
show, but I
Same.
also understood that he did not have any of his food with him because at that point we were out of our food.
Yeah.
He was enjoying time with his family, and then when he got home he wanted to enjoy time with his girlfriend, so I kind of
Yeah.
understood. It's not
Yeah.
my preferred approach, so that was
No.
kind of something that we had to be like a couple weeks in. I kind of had to be like smack him on the ass and be like, hey dude, like we
Oh
got to get
yeah.
this in order, otherwise this is going to fuck up our off season.
I
But
needed it.
since then he's really taken on board like my feedback about him treating himself like a professional before he can be one. Off-plan meals have been few and far between. Literally one of his only off-plan meals he's had, or sorry, two of them since the show, since we started the off season, were both with me. One was one was a date that we had with our significant others, and we both didn't eat our faces off. We were very
Yeah.
conscientious. And the other
Nice and
one was
modest.
literally because I upped his food massively and he was lighter by the end of the week. So I was like, you're gonna go get sushi.
Yeah. You're coming with me. We're getting sushi.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So treating himself like a professional. Is there anything you want to say about that, man?
No, honestly, I think you yourself just represent such a good model to your athletes to treat yourself like a professional. I mean, if you're one of Colton's athletes or one of Colton's, friends or just anybody close within his circle, you know how much he cares about this shit, how much he cares about his health, and how just on the ball he is with quite literally everything he does. And you know, becoming friends with you and seeing the ins and outs of how you live your life, how you support a family, how you support all of your athletes. And, you did have a job at that time. You were working at the time too, while being able to check every single box was like majorly inspiring for me to live, eat, breathe, sleep, and shit the bodybuilder lifestyle.
Yeah. I appreciate that, man. Like,
Yeah.
I know you don't have to say that, but I appreciate you saying it
I
because
mean it, dude.
seriously, like this is why I do this podcast. Like I never thought I'd be podcasting. I never thought I'd be a full-time coach. Honestly, like a year ago, I was like, I'm still gonna do this because I love it, but I don't think I'm ever gonna, be able to make a living doing this. And I'm sitting here doing that. And it's just because I fucking love this sport. And
Hmm.
I think the people who gravitate towards me are people who want to put as much as possible into this and really love it. And that's exactly what I
100%.
want, man. Like I don't don't chase numbers. I don't want a roster full of people who are fair weather. I want the people who are really about this and who really want to be coached and want to be coached hard. Um, and it doesn't mean that I'm like an asshole or anything. I think all my clients would tell you that I try to be very kind in my delivery, but I don't beat around the bush either. Like, you know, when it's time to say something, I say it. And,
Mhm.
you know, we've had some of those conversations
I
and
was gonna say, dude, there's been especially like post show, there was some times where it was just like I needed to be told what I have to do and do it now, and I needed that. You know, there's been multiple times, and
sometimes during the peak week, you
yeah,
like
that too.
even you there were
Yeah,
a
that
couple
too.
times where you were like kind of getting annoyed at me. I'm like, Kyle, I don't fucking care. I need you to do this right now.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, a-
100%.
and yeah, I mean, yeah, I, yeah, to leave off, guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this conversation. You know, sometimes on these podcasts, I can feel like I'm talking too much. You know, but I think hearing about this story and hearing about Kyle's story, you know, from his perspective is obviously the main reason we're doing this and super valuable, but also to hear kind of from my perspective too, being the one coaching him and also being his close friend, I think will be cool as well. And I hope you guys get a lot out of this. And you know, I hope you enjoyed. This is the longest episode we've done.
Yeah,
No,
dude.
no, and hopefully no shade to any of my other guests because they've been phenomenal, and any of my future guests is it's shorter, but obviously Kyle is someone very special to me, and I'm thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you
Yeah,
guys
dude.
do.
If you know us, you know we can freaking talk each other's heads off. So
Oh yeah,
I'm
dude.
not surprised that we're almost 2 hours in.
There's been many workouts that were 3 or 4 hours that should have been an hour and a half.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
for damn sure.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, guys, you know where to find Kyle. I think there are some things maybe we didn't get into in this episode that hopefully
Whatever.
maybe in the future we'll bring Kyle on an episode of Coffee and Questions with me and Lance or something. You guys can just rip some fucking questions at him.
Yeah, that'd
Um,
be fun.
yeah. But anyway, guys, this has been another episode of In the Trenches. For all you last 5 minute crew, drop a comment. Make sure to thank Kyle for his time, you know, on his day off. I really appreciate him doing this.
No, thanks
And
for
thank you
having
so
me.
much for listening and how much love I've gotten from doing this. I think just what I want people to know is like this, all this comes from a genuine place. Like I'm not doing this because I want anything out of it. I just hope that some other people get value out of it. And I hope to continue to just operate in the space. Just like I know Kyle does, and we love bodybuilding and we just want to have fun doing this and hopefully help others do that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else to say?
No, if you made it this far, thank you. I really appreciate you guys listening to the app session. It was fun, dude. I really appreciate you having me on. I hope we get to do it again. It would be really fun to join you and Lance for some coffee and questions. Some live questions would be really, really fun.
Absolutely.
So I thanks for having me on my first ever podcast, bro.
Absolutely, man. All right, guys. Peace.
Peace.